All righty. Hello again, Nate. This is episode 5. Look at us, up and counting.
Yes, yes. Well, happy Turkey Day Eve.
Yep. Happy Turkey Day Eve, Turkey Day. I don't really know what to think about celebrating a holiday based upon a farce. Like we came here as pilgrims, ready to just serve the people in the land with some blankets with some smallpox for their land, right? And
Well, you
oh, those
remember
are go ahead.
you remember the stand-up special Robin Williams did, I think back in 2002, where it was like in 30 seconds, he made fun of every single accent in like 30 seconds,
Wow, no,
like up on stage. And one of them was like the pilgrims coming is like, hello, we bring you guilt, syphilis, and alcohol.
guilt.
And they're like, oh, for us, this is a unhealthy carcinogen, but for you, it'll be cancer, or something to that effect. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, Robin Williams, man, he was really good. I really liked Williams. Hey,
Yeah.
before we get into the topic of discussion, which I want to talk about the paradox of tolerance, I'm actually really interested to hear a little bit about how Tennessee went.
Beautiful. It was great, serene, and everything that I thought it would be.
And for those who don't know, Nate recently went to go see, go to a Sadhguru compound, or can you kind of elaborate a little bit?
Well, it's the Isha Yoga Center in USA. There's two of them, I believe. One of them is it's in Tennessee, and it's about a 2-hour drive from Nashville. And it's kind of out in the woods. He specifically chose that place because he said he had a spiritual encounter when he was hiking the Trail of Tears.
Oh, really?
And he said he saw a frozen spirit of a Native American man that his spirit had just been frozen there for centuries. Said that it was the saddest moment of his life. So that's why he decided that when he wanted to open his yoga center in the USA, he specifically wanted it to be on the Trail of Tears. So that's what kind of why it's a little bit off the beaten path versus like right in the middle of the city somewhere, or like his one in LA. I think he has another Isha center in LA, but that's more in the city. So
yeah. Okay, interesting. When you say everything that you wanted it to be, or like what is can you elaborate a little bit?
It's just inner engineering. It's just certain tools that Sadhguru, I mean, for those of you who are familiar with yoga and specifically, Kriya yoga, how it can really enhance, your practice, or what they call their spiritual practice is sadhana, and kind of sets if you make it a daily practice, I'm pretty new into this, but
Sure.
it is said that, it gives you a sense of blissfulness for the rest of your day. You won't necessarily have to rely on SSRIs or, caffeine even to give you that extra little pep. And so it's been great.
The book, in a reductive capacity, is effectively getting you into geometric alignment to sacred geometry, so then you can effectively tap into the proper frequencies. Yeah.
Yes, the different yogas, obviously. Kriya, I believe, means energy. Other yogas like jnana yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge. There's the karma yoga, the yoga of action. There's also bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. And there's Kriya. So those are, I believe, the four yoga types.
Okay,
Different schools.
I've heard of Kundalini yoga. Is that something different? Isn't that running energy up and down the spine or something like that?
That's very Kundalini is I believe, and then again, I'm not an expert, but I believe Kundalini is Kriya yoga.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's
That
what
makes sense.
it's associated with. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool, man. And then how much time did you spend there?
4 days. 4 days. It was great. 4 days. The one in Tennessee, it's nice because they actually have housing there. You don't have to rely, like in the one in LA, I think it's smaller, so you have to rely on like getting a hotel room or Airbnb. But this one's right there on the center. It's great. They also offer, if you fly into the Nashville airport, they offer each offers a shuttle. It's a 2-hour drive otherwise. And you can fly into Chattanooga, and Chattanooga is like a 45-minute drive. But the downside of flying into Chattanooga is, well, at least from Texas, is there's no direct flights. So that was also there's no shuttles. So I just figured I'd take that route. But it's great. I highly recommend it. Go ahead to, look up Isha Yoga Center USA and you can take a look for yourself and take a look at the program. They
And
also offer inner engineering online as well too, for those that
can't get out there.
can want to do it on their own at their own pace.
What was kind of the impetus that got you so interested in doing it?
Well, I'll say that earlier this year, there's something also about South Austin. For those that don't know, South Austin has kind of always been kind of a haven for the hippie underground, a lot of spiritual types. It's funny because just a couple miles south of me, it's all rural areas and stuff, but they're all hippies that live there. They're all these small towns, but not what you think of a small town. They're just all hippies that back in the day in the 60s moved down there so they could just do acid or whatever, not have anybody bother them. And so I think even before that, Austin has always had been a magnet for spiritualism. I mean, I believe the natives that had lived here 10,000 years ago regarded Barton Springs as a very sacred pool, and then later when the conquistadors and all of that came, they built a mission and stuff like that right off of the banks of Barton Springs. So it's always been some kind of a gravity well, I think, for spirituality, this particular area. And people that move out here, we've got all kind of new age stuff too, but so it's just very much in the culture. And I was kind of getting a time in my life where I wanted to kind of, being new to the area, I wanted to kind of rely more on like other ways of meeting people rather than just having to go to the bar.
Yeah.
Not that I'm opposed to going to a bar or anything like that. It's just that I just really haven't felt the desire to. And at the same time, I still want to connect with people and figured that spirituality would be a great way to do that.
I found that my spiritual path has me vibrating at higher frequencies, which makes a depressant near anathema to me. And it's not like I'm like, ew, alcohol. I just have no desire to drink. And then, yelling really loud with, with usually way, over volumized freaking music. It gets to be a bit much. I was totally okay with it in my 20s, but now, I don't know, man. I have found that my spiritual path has led me to where I've kind of sloughed off friends, not because I'm better than them, but just because they just do things that just don't really interest me anymore.
Well, people, everybody's on their own path.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own karma to work out, and this is the one I'm on right now, and so far I feel at peace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's a reason for that, right? If you're at peace, and it may not, what gives you peace today may not necessarily be what brings you peace tomorrow. But if you're at peace in the now, well, then there's a reason for that. And you certainly listen to it.
That's true.
And so with that, I think that's a great segue into the idea of the paradox of tolerance. Because ultimately, I think that, anyone who even remotely tunes into, politics or, political activism, I don't think that you could keep a straight face and say that anyone involved in political activism has any sense of peace.
Well, no, I think there's a term that activists are always itching for a fight. So, in politics, no, I agree with you. And that's why I believe to a certain degree, especially for those that are politically aware or in the now and stuff. I think it's good. It's great to have a sense of spirituality because it keeps you anchored, and it also kind of fends off nihilism or a sense of nihilism, a feeling of just complete nothingness and that there's no meaning, in life, because it's very easy to fall into that, especially, for those of us who are awakened, to the realities that exist in this, socioeconomic political world. That we kind of do live in a socially constructed matrix.
Yeah.
And, kind of getting into the whole, I guess, how you're titling this is the paradox of tolerance, or
Yeah. So
right.
from Karl Popper, and the paradox of tolerance, usually it's a very small snippet that people use, which is effectively, for any tolerant society to remain tolerant, they have to be intolerant of intolerance. Otherwise, the intolerant will just, waylay over all the tolerant and take over. And usually nowadays, you'll see it in, with like a Nazi who's like yelling at these guys, yelling at him, saying, "Hey, if you're so tolerant, you should tolerate my ideas." Now, the thing that most people leave out, though, is that Karl Popper further said that we shouldn't be looking to suppress the utterance of intolerant philosophies as long as we can keep them in check with rational ideas. And when people divorce themselves from rationality and rational ideas, which is like somebody who's constantly itching for a fight, who wants to scream at you, who doesn't believe in compromise, well, that's the exact intolerant world Karl Popper, who came up with his book as the Nazi regime was falling. That's what he warned us against. And interestingly enough, I see the Democrats tolerate that intolerance. And as, batshit crazy as I might think Trump is, I don't think he tolerates that intolerance. And people might say, well, Josh, you've got Nazis that support Trump. And, hey, to the degree that a guy carrying a tiki torch is a Nazi, let's just assume, for argument's sake, that he is. It doesn't hold sway over the national paradigm, but wokeness absolutely does. You'll get CNN, MSNBC, Fox News jumping on, getting people either canceled or, for one reason or another. And so that level of intolerance is in the mainstream. And I think that's a far more dangerous intolerance that we need to be worried about, because it's now being corporatized. I did a podcast with a friend of mine, Will Markham, and it got taken down by YouTube because I spoke about an Israeli study where they looked into when people who just got sick by the disease and people who got heart problems with the what I won't name, or else I'll take this down and take down my whole page. And it's ridiculous. And I would say that is a level of intolerance that we shouldn't tolerate, because we're now having YouTube medical standards that fly in the face of real world research, real world medical studies, all for the sake of adhering to what I would say a woke paradigm.
Well, wokeism itself is one of the most intolerant movements on the face of the planet, masquerading as around as something as being tolerant. It's essentially a lot of bullying.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Everyone piles up on you if you disagree.
It's basically, it's essentially the worst aspects of what McCarthyism and that genre, because we've seen this before. It's not just something that's owned by the Democrats. It's not, anything that's an ideology or something that's constructed by man, obviously is going to have its downsides, especially if it's been taken to an extreme. And in the 1950s, for example, we saw this as a right-wing extremity with especially McCarthyism, where people were not able to express any sympathies. You don't have to necessarily agree, for example, with Marx or call yourself a Marxist, but to completely have an un-Americans activity committee and look at the lives in Hollywood and all of that were destroyed and such. So it's just the paradox of tolerance. Right now, it feels that the liberal wing in the United States is ascendant. And what I mean by ascendant is that more people at least identify with socially progressive values, whereas like maybe 40 years ago, it was completely reversed. It was safer to go out and say that I'm a conservative. Ronald Reagan was president and stuff. So things always change, dynamics change, and they're fluid. Right now, this is the cycle we're going through. 20 years ago was completely different with the Iraq War and everything too. You know, you couldn't even could have criticized George W. Bush, or now you're considered an un-American person, you know. Right now, with, you know, cancel culture as it is, I think people are fed up and they see it everywhere. I mean, you even have people like Bill Maher that call it out routinely, and he's kind of probably the top trendsetter for all liberals that, you know, either him, I don't know who replaced him now or anything. Yeah.
Well, and then what's interesting is that, you know, many of the woke crowd, when it first started, you know, the people heralding that, right? You get like Matt Lauer. Well, come to find out that these are some of the worst leches, you know, to ever exist.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how easy it is.
Look at the Clintons.
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy. It's so interesting how easy it is for it to be hijacked. I was engaging on Facebook. I don't necessarily engage in political, you know, commentaries on Facebook, but I saw somebody post a thing, you know, making fun of Trump. It was like a Simpsons, you know, a Simpsons meme, basically just making fun of the fact that he came out trying to make himself relevant. And I just posted on it. I'd probably vote for him. That was it. That was it. And immediately bigotry. Oh, I'm a bigot now. And it's insane. And then somebody had mentioned, well, you know, I'm not going to vote for somebody who wants to cancel my marriage. And I said, hey, that sounds like a good reason. Is it so far-fetched to think that other people have good reasons too for why they vote? And there was just no answer. It was just all a bunch of just calling me some buffoon or a barbarian.
I call this out. No. This is the problem I have with identity politics and extreme identitarian issues. For one thing, this is not what, you know, and I don't even consider myself to be a Marxist, but this is not what Marxism, you know, Marxism would be considered what we call cultural left issues as another brick inside the ideological superstructure to put out there with religion and all of that keeps the bourgeois classes in power. So first thing is, people that call themselves Marxist and dye their hair purple and all of that don't know shit about Marx to begin with. There are same people that identify themselves as the so-called left, where they embrace only these cultural issues and forget everything about the economic stuff, which is the only thing that he wrote about.
Right.
So, no, but, you know, that aside, it's easier to manage people when you relinquish your identity, your personal identity as an individual.
Which is interesting, because the sage would want you to, in some ways, relinquish your personal identity, but this is alienation.
I'm talking about what society, into different societal groups, communities, as I think the liberals like to call it, right? The gay community, the LGBTYU plus community, or
LGBTYU. Well, I wonder if the difference there is, instead of willingly giving up for a higher purpose, they're alienating it for a lower purpose. And I wonder if that's what the main difference is.
Whatever the purpose is I think it's easier to manage people when there's less critical thinking, when people 100%. Are able to go ahead and just go along to get along with whatever crowd they identify with. So if I'm Black, for example, as Joe Biden said, if you're not Black, you know, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black.
That was a moment of,
that was a Freudian slip. you can't tell me that's not what a lot of Black supporters of Joe Biden were thinking. And that was in the collective unconscious, what he just voiced. And so there are Black people that just probably they probably would be critical of Joe Biden if they could actually voice their opinion rather than have to simulate with whatever the community.
It's funny that you say that, because even like trans issues, the average trans person that you talk to is arguably reasonable, even if they have some, weird ideas about their identity and their body. But the trans activists are some of the worst people to deal with. And it's insane, man, that the fact that I might be like, hey, that person I find kind of weird, and it kind of turns me off that they got these weird hairy legs, they got these hairy armpits, and they're dressing like somebody that would normally make me think that they should be sexy, and I should be able to have these weird thoughts. I don't necessarily need to go and express them to that person and make them feel bad. But the second that I even have a thought that diverges from the mainstream paradigm, well, now I'm running into the most intolerant people who claim to be vying for tolerance. And that's what's so hard, because then you come back to Carl Sagan, that if you try to point out, right, the bamboozle, well, once they're bamboozled, they're fully bamboozled. And the more you point it out, the more they double down in the bamboozle. And so if you point out how intolerant they are, well, they say, well, it's for a higher purpose. But then if you talk about ends justify the means, it just goes right over their head. And just how dangerous ends justify the means goes right over their head.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's because they've never had anybody really challenge their worldview. That's something that used to be, I mean, I counsel people nowadays to not go to college. College, back in the day, I would encourage everybody to go to college, or at least go find an avenue where you can be exposed to it, because it used to be that's what colleges would teach. No matter what you majored in, they taught you how to think critically, how to look at information and question it. That all, at least, I mean, I remember when I first was going to university, they had free speech zones where people could just go on a soapbox and talk about anything and everything. I mean, you get everything from people opposing the Iraq war to standing up for Palestine rights to now all of a sudden, you have, extreme evangelical people up there talking about abortion. So that's all been replaced now by safe spaces and stuff.
Yeah.
People do that. So they've never really had anybody to really challenge their worldview. I mean, you can watch it. I think Jordan Peterson, for example, was it on Channel 4, some British channel? He was being questioned by a very good tradition. Otherwise, I've seen some other stuff of theirs reporting that, they were a pretty good interviewer, but it was something all on I believe it was either the transgender issue or it was one of those social issues. And he was answering her question. And she would say, oh, so you're against trans? And he's like, no, you don't get what I'm trying to say. Or it's like,
what was it, the lady that was like, so what you're saying is, and every single turn is like, so what you're saying is, or is this something recent?
Yeah. Or accusing him of something after he just explained something and being a bigot. And it's like, it was a kangaroo court. And so
it was a total kangaroo court. And then if I recall, she even tried to lampoon him like, hey, why is it that most of your viewers are men? As if that's a bad thing. As if speaking to men and helping
agree. I'm not saying you necessarily have to agree with, Dr. Peterson or something, but the thing is he was treated so unfairly.
Yeah.
And, you could bring up other things and such like that, but when you don't do that, you automatically it's because in her mind, she already saw him as something, as a bigot.
Well, she was there to prove to the world and destroy his image.
Yeah.
Right.
The image.
Right. I think it was Mother Teresa that says, once you judge somebody, then you lose all ability to learn from them.
Well, not only that, but I think it's what is it, Carl Jung actually, that said that we often project onto people some of our worst tendencies and such like that. So when you see a lot of authoritarian Democrats out there, at least what was evident during the lockdown and everything, project onto Donald Trump as being some authoritarian.
100%. Yeah, well, and the weak people are the worst. weak people are the ones that often become authoritarian because they've never challenged themselves, right? And why would challenge be good? Well, I mean, that's how our muscles grow, right? You go to the gym, you challenge your muscles, and you know what the result is? Your
Now they
your
don't
muscles
even
get
want you to go to
stronger.
the gym. Now, I mean, what was it? Adele a few years ago was criticized for losing weight.
I know. Because
We live in the
here's his,
upside down. We live in the upside down now, where up is down and left is right, and it's just crazy. And the body positivity and stuff. Look, nobody, I think, in their right mind, I believe in, and I think most people believe in the golden rule and golden principle: treat other people like you like to be treated. No one likes to see a bully, regardless of who or what it is. Even if a trans person, no one wants to see anybody get bullied or anything like that. But it doesn't give you the right to go ahead and bully everybody to using pronouns or addressing you by whatever pronouns you use. I mean, it's like what Dave Chappelle said: to what extent do I have to participate in your self-image?
right. Now, I
Um,
don't know that I would say that nobody wants to see, because I think that there are people that truly enjoy seeing the bullying,
well, there are.
especially when they feel that they have the right ideas. And that's when things are scary. When, the Tao says to, the presumption of knowledge, right? To presume to know is a disease, right? I saw it in myself when I was a political activist. I assumed that my ideas were the right ideas. Therefore, I acted in ways in which people who, insulated me with these ideas told me would be a good way. Hey, stand up for your privilege. Go and yell at these politicians.
Yeah.
Join whatever sort of march or political event, and cause some ruckus.
Yeah.
And it led me to probably being the most miserable I felt in my life, because I wasn't dealing with anything on the inside. Like you mentioned, Carl Jung, I was simply alienating the
Yeah.
issues that I had within and the chaos I had within, and projected it outside. And they're now the problem. And rather than deal with myself, right, I try to deal with it externally, and just made things worse for me.
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot, especially when you're expected to be a quote unquote ally and all of that
Yeah.
too, to different groups. I mean, whether you have to wear the, Black Lives Matter, shirt and all of that kind of stuff. Now, if you believe in equal rights now for Black people, it's like, no, or now you have to even call yourself a feminist if you believe in equal rights for women. And it's like, well, first of all, why, if I believe in equal rights, why do I have to assign it a gender to begin with?
Yeah. If I was a
Why can't I
feminist,
just
doesn't
say
that
I'm an
mean that
egalitarian?
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Because if I'm a feminist, isn't that saying that I put, femininity above anything else?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Why not just say I'm an egalitarian?
Well, I'd imagine most people wouldn't even know what that meant. And so then they'd look at you just kind of glassy eyed. So there's another thing too that I did like in the Tao, and it talks about how the more prohibitions you have, the less virtuous people will be. And I wonder if that's perhaps a big
The
of
more
an
prohibitions
issue.
you have, the less virtues.
The less virtuous people will be. So let's say, look at the prohibition on alcohol, and it created Al Capone and some of the worst days and darkest days of the
Marijuana, for
20th
example.
century.
Look at the prohibition on cannabis, and
The prohibition on cannabis and all the people locked up and destroyed. And then I
or not
wonder
only
if that
that, but
could,
look also like on the prohibition on what psychedelics.
yeah.
I mean, mental health. I mean, we're going through some very serious stuff. I mean, everybody to some extent suffers from some degree of mental health. I'm convinced, even the ones that purport to be completely normal all the time. Everybody's got some sense of trauma and stuff like that. I mean, in the last 2 years, especially, with the lockdowns and everything.
I think
And
it's fair enough to say that everyone, even if there is a hole in that donut, right,
yeah,
and there's exceptions to the rule, I think that there's enough people that
yeah.
would fall into that category to be able to generalize. Because I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And,
so
and
few people
it's
who
something
even take
that's
the
like
time to try to.
you're looking at what pharmaceuticals first thing they do. I mean, I had a friend, it was on social media, they were asking about, what kind of therapists, people would recommend. And my first instinct was like, okay, well, this place helped me. It's a ketamine place. They don't even specialize in talk therapy. And I said, my concern is, with a lot of talk therapists now is that they try to railroad a lot of patients into seeing a psychiatrist or some doctor to prescribe them some antidepressants. And recent studies have come out that, well, a lot of people have intuitively known for a long time is that most of these antidepressants, they don't do anything for you. And in fact, we don't even know if they might be causing more problems too.
Well, the fact that a lot of antidepressants require an antipsychotic on top of it suggests that it's terrible for you.
Yeah, and so, and then not only that, but it's like, if it doesn't work out, then you have to wean yourself off of it. They'll try something else on you, and then you have to go through the test. So it's like, I'm not a human guinea pig.
Now,
Take some mushrooms, go do something that, for millennia people have done and has helped them with, and that's what I just recommend to people. I mean, I'm not opposed to talk therapy. I think there's something very therapeutic about it, but I said, as soon as they start talking about like giving you medication and stuff like that, there's no such thing as, a happiness pill.
Well, and that's even why, so Kanye, as crazy as he is, right? That's why he doesn't take his bipolar meds, is because it puts you in this weird middle plateau where you don't feel any of the lows and you don't feel any of the highs. And the highs are exactly, that's why Robin Williams didn't take his medicine when he would act, so he could actually feel his highs. Now, to your point about psychedelics, there's a researcher by the name of Brian Mirarescu, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who went back into ancient cultures and looked at their ceremonies and saw that, people like Plato, Aristotle, right, their drinks that they were drinking were full of psychedelics. And Plato came up with a really interesting idea of the benevolent despot. And the only way that you could become a benevolent despot is by doing psychedelics. In fact, there's a journalist by the name of Graham Hancock who's shown overwhelming evidence.
I love Graham Hancock.
I love Graham. So he's shown overwhelming evidence of how our modern culture is far older than we've been allowed to believe. And the people who have written books, like the Egyptologists, well, they have an incentive to not allow people to dig deeper to prove that we are older than they've said. And so, but these are people who often operate in just the ego, who would never trip balls, who would never take mushrooms, never take LSD, who never do ayahuasca in order to find a higher level. And then, there's not Terrence McKenna, but Dennis McKenna. I think he was talking to Joe Rogan or, Lex Friedman, just about the different entities that you meet with different psychedelics. And I don't think that it's unfair to say that these ancient cultures, tripping balls, met these entities that gave them the ability to advance culture in ways that we just wouldn't have.
Well, you're touching on a lot of cool stuff here. As soon as you brought up Graham Hancock, because I'm a big follower of Graham, and also Randall Carlson.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been down those YouTube rabbit holes and all of that too. Another really good one, kind of in a different direction, is Dr. Stephen Greer, but he's more into UFOs and stuff like that. But he kind of goes into a similar vibe with when talking about entities, because that's one thing that, especially, like the Rig Veda and, a lot of these ancient things have been teaching, is that the multiverse is real. A lot of the ancients realized that and knew about it. And even today, we're still catching up, barely to what the concept of a multiverse is. I mean, Marvel just introduced it. So people are like getting used to the whole concept in mass, at least entertainment wise, but, and all sorts, even pre-Islamic Middle East, there's a lot of very interesting traditions that involve jinn, extra dimensional creatures that aren't necessarily evil, or, they're,
when you say jinn, DJINN, right?
Yes. That's where they get the term genie from, from Islam. But they're extra dimensional entities. In fact, there is a real Necronomicon. There is a real Arabic book that's pre-Islamic that's considered to be the real Necronomicon or whatever. Necronomicon, yeah, that Lovecraft used.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a really good YouTube channel if you ever want to go down to, it's actually all done by Saudi Arabians. It's really good quality.
Interesting.
It's Mysterious Middle East. There's some really cool thought-provoking videos there too about.
So the idea of the Necronomicon kind of freaks me out. That's got to be a portal to just sheer darkness, darkness beyond darkness that I just can't even fathom. Now coming back to Graham Hancock real quick though, he mentioned something that I thought was really fascinating. He said that anyone who wants to run for public office should have to do, I think he said at least 3 ayahuasca trips, because it's gonna dissolve the ego to such a point that you can't help but look at the greater good and get out of your own way and actually serve people instead of just, serving yourself. And it'll also inoculate you because it'll give you something to believe in, as far as people bastardizing and perverting your whole point of going into office.
Yeah, I actually just joined a couple of months ago an assembly here in Austin, a new one, All Tribes Medicine Assembly. They're legitimate shaman assembly. The head shaman there, she can legally administer ayahuasca. She can legally administer all kinds of psychedelics legally in the state of Texas. And so I haven't taken her up on it yet. There's a specific, I don't know which one it is. There's ayahuasca. There's another one that she recommends. She says even more potent than ayahuasca. That you have to go on a specific diet for like 5 days, like a specific plant diet for like 5 days before you go on it. And it's just one-on-one with her.
Interesting.
And so I'll let you know about that when I do it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Well, and I would love personally to meet Lady Ayahuasca and see, what she would have, to tell me. What I don't know is that, people who do things for worldly reasons that are just to make money, they're not necessarily the place I'd want to go. Now, I don't know any place that's really out for my best interest, right? Or even what's his name? Gabor Mate was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about how he went to go do
I love him and his son. His son's great too, as far as foreign policy to listen to. Aaron Mate, he's always on.
Is that his son? I was wondering if that
son.
was his dude. Aaron, dude, he's so awesome. And so Gabber was talking about how he went to some shamans, and they said, bro, your darkness, we can't be, you can't participate in this circle because your darkness is disrupting basically everyone else's flow. And so that's interesting. And that seems like those are people who have his best interest in mind. I would prefer to find somebody who can actually deal with that. Because if other people are slipping in that don't have that darkness, am I susceptible to their vibrations now that I'm near them, tripping balls, and my defenses are lowered? And so that's something that I haven't quite, because I mean, ayahuasca, you're completely vulnerable. I guess ketamine you are too, but ketamine, I was in a room.
I've done ketamine.
Yeah, so have I.
I've had some great experiences on ketamine. But yeah, that's actually the precursor to me wanting to do a spiritual path, is my experience in a K-hole.
Yeah. Well, was it so a K-hole? Are you familiar with a K-hole is a very deep, dark place that you go.
Oh, I just, that's what my friends told me as soon as because I had it legally administered me in Salt Lake, SLC ketamine. I highly recommend that place to anybody because they offer the lowest cost point, I believe, in the country still. So,
so a K-hole, if I recall, is effectively when the dissociative is bringing you down. Mm-hmm. Then you start fighting it and you start freaking out at the things that you see, and you can't, you're going down a water slide. It doesn't matter how hard you fight, you're going down a water slide.
That's why I just went in it with my intent. It's like, okay, you're going on a ride, adios, just don't fight it.
Yep. Well, if you show curiosity, no matter what you see, if you show curiosity at what you see, that will likely protect you from any sort of bad trip.
Also environment. I think environment is also important. That's why I really liked SLC ketamine, is because it didn't feel like a doctor's office.
No.
It felt like a very, at the time, I think they've moved into another location, but when I was there, it was overlooked like a very green area. They had a very cozy, like a fake fire, and they had these big warm love bags and stuff like that. So you can go out and stare into nature. I think nature optimally is probably the best environment to do it in if you can. That's why people love to do shrooms when they go camping and such.
Yeah.
Is you feel more connected. And even going back to like peyote and the Native Americans and such, that there's something about just being out, I think, in nature, because there's a reason why all cultures believe even Mother Earth. Why do we call it Mother Earth? Has a spirit of her own, a consciousness of her own, Mother Gaia.
Well, and Sadhguru talks about how we are all just extensions of soil.
Yeah. So this kind of brings me into my favorite concept, is that I actually really am intrigued by non-duality.
So I like the idea. I don't. It kind of boggles my head, and it kind of breaks my brain a little bit. I understand the concept, but it's one of those things where, so Alan Watts talks about this, and he was given a story, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but somebody talking to his Zen master and says, how do you accord with the Tao? And it says that when you try to accord, you deviate. And I think that that's non-duality. It's one of those things that just kind of clicks, and you understand it, and you're there, and you're living it, and you don't try, right? It's that Yoda thing, do or do not. There is no try.
My first experience with non-duality was when I did ketamine, and it freaked me out, and I compartmentalized it. I had a glimpse of what oneness was, and it was a little too much for my brain, I think, at the time to handle. So I just kind of like compartmentalized it, compartmentalized it, and then stumbled upon Advaita Vedanta when I started researching, different Hinduism schools and such. I'm like, oh my God, this is kind of what I experienced, although it was all written out and stuff like that. So that's interesting. And then the fact that you say, oh, we come from the same soil, it's Mother Earth. Well, we come from a consciousness, a sea of consciousness, I think. And that our soul, we're in this time space, in this fourth dimension. We seem everything is separate, but I think when we are able to see things from a higher degree, that it's all one. And who knows what that can unlock, maybe something that we can't even fathom. That's what I think. In some Hindu traditions, they call the realm of Shiva. Beyond that, we don't know. Which opens up a whole lot of stuff to imagination. I mean, that's why now when I look at it, and by no means am I depressed or do I have suicide ideation or anything like that, but it kind of makes me look forward to what death is, because it's just another adventure.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is it seems the people who are most educated on what consciousness is buy into the idea of past lives, that the consciousness is immortal, and we put on different avatars throughout the ages to learn the lessons that we're here to learn.
It makes sense to me, because in some ways, if everything does mimic itself, even in the natural world, then it's basically Darwinism, but extended into the spiritual world.
Well, and the world is fractal in nature, in that, what we see in the universe, right? If you look at, say, a galactic filament, the largest, the largest, astral, thing, I guess, I don't know really how best to describe it. It looks very similar to the connective tissue, in our bodies. And it's really interesting to see how modern physics will now say that we most likely live in some level of virtual reality. And in most virtual realities that we create here, right, you might be the same consciousness, just in a different avatar, playing the same game, doing the same things, but with different characters, right? With World of Warcraft, for instance, you could have 10 different characters on one server. and same consciousness playing with a different avatar. And I see that working very harmoniously with that idea and the fact that it's a very fractal nature and represents, what's represented in, the hologram. Every small piece of the hologram represents has the entire hologram in it.
Yeah.
And once you learn to align yourself and learn to do things like, like I've learned that people probably think I'm crazy, and heal, well, that's just hacking the hologram. And that's all it is. It's hacking the hologram. And, Sadhguru talks about how he's, blessed places, how people have been healed by looking at him. And that wasn't him saying, hey, look how cool I am. And I think he was just talking about faith and the power of the mind. But again, how is that possible? How is it possible for Jesus to heal? Well, hacking the hologram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It explains a lot about why there are clairvoyants in the world, why people can perceive the future. I mean, I've had instances where I don't see the future, but I've had very distinct times in my life where it scared me because I have what they call precognitions. And that's no significant thing or something. It would be like I have a daydream, where I have a conversation with someone and then months later it manifests. And it can be something completely insignificant and I don't realize it at the moment. Then you're like, holy crap, I actually.
Yeah. Because something stops you then. Like when you're in that moment, you kind of step back and like, wait a minute, I remembering this. And how crazy is that you remembered it before it happened?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've experienced that a lot. So and then kind of going to like what Stephen Greer kind of goes, because he kind of takes the whole thing, and he doesn't even come from a religious or even a spiritual background. He comes from his background is science, and he's a medical doctor as it is. He's a former trauma ER surgeon. And he said that he had a near-death experience when he was like in his late teens, and that his body went somewhere. And so that he knew from a very early age that there is a life afterwards, and that he interacted with different extraterrestrial beings and stuff like that. And he says a lot of their technology is also, not only is it, they communicate with consciousness.
Yeah, telepathically.
Well, they've learned how to make a technology or like integrate technology with consciousness. And so that's why you can actually summon through the certain protocols and stuff like he's come with the CE5 protocols. You can summon extra dimensional beings. You can summon jinn and stuff. Sometimes they want to materialize fully and stuff like that. But he's been on places where he's been with significant world leaders and stuff like that, and he's taught these same protocols to them.
Well, and every single government of every major country has a remote viewing sector and has some sort of clairvoyant, special soldiers and elite soldiers. And so I wonder,
all relies on ESP. That's basically what it is. All points in space and time are connected. It's the hologram,
right?
But it doesn't only extend through our universe. That's the thing, it's multi-dimensional too. It's really trippy.
It is very trippy. So I wonder I certainly can see the chain of events in my life, how psychedelics had led me to find more of a connection to life, which then led me to more of a connection to spirit, which then led me to a spiritual path. And so I wonder if that perhaps might be step one in solving some of our intolerance problems, is figuring out a way to legalize and decriminalize psychedelics, allow capitalism to do what capitalism does, and to have a bunch of shops pop up. Unfortunately, there's going to be some people that are going to get shut down because they're just not doing things, along safety protocols. But I think more and all, the people who are involved will likely be trying to serve the community. When you are around somebody who wants to help you get better, and then you come down off of a trip, especially like ketamine, and you feel amazing, you kind of imprint a bit of a, baby duck attachment to them. And there's a bit of a soft spot in your heart. I certainly have that for ketamine SLC and Dr. Heemstra.
I love Dr. Heemstra. He's amazing.
And so I wonder if that might be, now I am very cautious about any sort of idea of a panacea. But one argues that mushrooms may not even be of this earth. Have come from extraterrestrial sources as well, and the whole stoned ape theory, then perhaps leading us into the levels of consciousness and awareness.
Something happened.
Yeah,
Something happened. Because in the whole history of this planet, we're the only species that's ever come to question its own existence. Something had to have happened in our evolution. Now, was it extraterrestrial, or did they put stuff here, or something, like you said, with mushrooms and stuff? Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? But mushrooms, psychedelics, I've even heard people that don't do drugs that say, you know what, we need to even stop classifying these as drugs. They're not drugs. They're portals into different universes.
different dimensions for sure.
Different dimensions, different realities, different, or maybe they're portals into the ultimate reality. Maybe this is all the illusion, right?
So this is for sure the illusion.
That's what I'm saying. We're living in Maya.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Huh.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And
it's interesting when you look at it, because simulation theory on its head, I imagine, was probably conceived by people who probably consider themselves at least agnostic or atheist, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I have to look up. I mean, it's probably heavily influenced by like Niels Bohr and Heisenberg.
They might have even looked at the Vedas and Hinduism too, and be like, well, wait,
possible.
Maybe you never know. They're philosophers, I think, some of them to begin with. So, but like I said, the ancients have known about this for a long time. They've known about a lot of shit that they probably shouldn't have known, if we really want to believe traditional history and all that kind of stuff. But whether it's Graham Hancock or I think that he's definitely right on the head, that there's a large part of our history that has been lost.
Yeah.
Because even as human form as we are, I think we've been around for at least 200,000 years in our current form.
I want to say
5,000 years recorded history. That's just.
I want to say there was a recent discovery of cooking fish as far back as 700,000
Israel,
years.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in all likelihood, some bipedal version of us, maybe caveman-like, existed around 1 million years ago, which is kind of insane to think about, when a lot of common knowledge is just that, well, we were created give or take 50,000 years ago, and then just started agriculture 10,000 years ago. And
we really need to start scanning the Sahara and the Amazon and stuff like that to see what we find.
So LiDAR is making that a little bit easier, but then it's going to be a lot of bureaucratic red tape, I think, to get through to be able to investigate certain areas, whether it be the Amazon. The bureaucratic red tape could just be that the loggers own the land and they don't want you to go through, because if you find some hidden temples in there, well, they're no longer going to be able to log there. Or it could just be that the governments are full of small-minded people that want to be the ones to find it first, and don't want an outsider to find it, because it feels like it might diminish their value. Now, coming back to the idea of the paradox of tolerance, and what I found with activist culture, and what I found with them alienating, and something that I think, alienating, who they are on the inside and refusing to admit who they are, I find that they become the devil that they're trying to oppose. They use authoritarianism to oppose authoritarianism. And
that's what projecting is. Yeah.
That's
a lot of that's just projecting. Yeah. I mean, you see it. I mean, why? I mean, here's the thing. I'm not an Elon Musk stan or anything like that, but at the same time, why the concerted effort, the hate campaign against him?
Well,
Why?
you know what? Because so if he makes it to where every person who, has a Twitter account has to pay like $8, we can no longer buy fake followers. And fake followers absolutely influence elections in this country,
Oh
because
yeah,
they'll see that.
bombs.
Yeah, they'll see that Twitter, somebody tweets and like, oh, it looks like 7 million people like that. And then the news will pick it up and then run rampant when seven-eighths of those could be completely bought and paid for fake accounts. And so he's going to upend their Apple Card, but he's not necessarily doing it for good means. I mean, that dude had like a $15,000 Halloween costume that said Devil's Champion, which kind of freaked me out a little bit. If it was just like some like rinky dink put together,
Oh,
that was like a $10 costume with like a trash bag that said Devil's Champion, I'd laugh at that. But the fact that it was so intricate and had a Baphomet on it and it's like $15,000, like, ooh, I don't know,
oh,
man. This kind
my
of
my criticisms of Musk are more in the fact that he's very, very much married to the military-industrial complex. And in fact, I have a tweet here I was looking up where he tweeted January 25th, 2020, where he's responding to a tweet. Armani, I don't know who Armani is, but he said Armani was tweeting out, you know what wasn't the best interest of people? The US government organizing a coup against Evo Morales in Bolivia so you could obtain lithium there. That's true. That's why the CIA orchestrated it. And he tweeted back in response, Elon did, we will coup whoever we want, deal with it. So he's not some champion of human rights or anything like that. I mean, he's going to be marginally better on when it comes to freedom of speech for cultural issues and stuff like that. So yay. But when it comes to actually challenging powerful interests and stuff like that, or like the security state or military industrial complex, he's still not going to protect people like the next Edward Snowden or Julian Assange or anything like that. I would not expect that.
I would definitely not expect him to be a champion of the people, though. I wonder if just by nature, the way he thinks, he might inadvertently be so. And what I mean by that is that like all of his patents, right? He puts them up for, for free, for anyone to build what he's building, because he thinks that, at least he says that he thinks that, humanity should be able to progress. And so that flies in the face of the paradigm of the people who are at his level. The people well, I guess he's the richest man in the world now, so there really aren't, many people at his level. But the
I don't know
people,
if he is anymore. I don't know if he is anymore.
yeah, he may not be anymore.
Yeah, but
But
he's definitely up there. He's definitely in the top five.
well, the people at his or around his level are more about control than they are about money. And that doesn't seem like a guy who's looking for control. Right? Putting a Twitter poll up to see what Twitter thinks about reinstating Trump's, Twitter profile. That
Well,
doesn't
I
really
think on
seem to be about
principle,
a
I
guy.
would have just gone ahead and done it without taking a poll.
I like that he made it democratic. And the reason why I like that he made it democratic, so people can cry about it and show how anti-democratic they are, all in the face of, of democracy.
That's a
And
point.
and so I like that. And I'm sure it'll go above their heads, but at least the people watching will see like, hey, this guy's actually doing something democratic, which is, like my friend Will, who I interviewed in the YouTube video got taken off. He believes that people should abstain from voting. And the reason why is because he thinks that if enough people, show that the system doesn't work, then the system will collapse. Where I find that very dangerous because I think it's very easy for people in power to take a very small minority of people who vote and then show, hey, look, we have free and fair elections. But if you know,
What happens now?
yeah, I know. But here's the thing, though, is that if we already know that votes are going to be flipped, that it's going to take 2 weeks to count votes, even though, right, we've got, special events, sports events, that, things can be tallied at a fraction of the time. We know that things will be flipped, like in the case of Bernie. And and we know that votes are going to be stolen, well, why make it easy? Wouldn't it benefit the consciousness more, and wouldn't it lead to more awakening by voting and forcing them to flip your vote? I mean, don't like give your life over to the cause, because they're going to steal it. If you give your life to the cause, they're going to steal your life. But if you take the time to vote, and everyone takes the time to vote, it's going to take a huge concerted effort for them to flip those votes.
But the thing is who do you vote for?
Who cares?
Well,
Yeah.
my thing is the point is where I kind of agree with your friend there. I still vote, at least right now I do, but I don't vote for any of the two major parties. I avoid them as much as I can, unless I only had a choice between judges here, and I voted for the Democratic judges, the only Democrats I voted for in my local election. Otherwise I voted straight ticket libertarian. I'm debating on whether or not to do it, because I don't think you'll ever be forced enough to do it. But to your friend's point, right now, majority of Americans don't vote that are eligible. It's a very few that do. It's basically team red and team blue. But if you
look how terrible.
If you only believe 25%, or 30% of America is a lot, there's 100 million Americans that stay out of voting cycles every.
But doesn't that kind of prove my point, that the less people who vote, the worse the system becomes?
They don't report it that way because it's true, because that's happening right now. But it's reported.
They don't report
this
it because
person
it's not
ginned
their
up support, or this person wins, or they want you to think that everybody you meet, what's getting reported, it gets caught up into this, what I like to call, it's a secular Maya, because they'd rather, if you watch the news, whether it's Fox News or whether it's CNN, they would like you to think that it's 50-50, everybody you meet on the street.
Right.
They're either a Democrat or there's a Republican, when it's not that. That's not what resembles remotely the reality that we live in.
Right. That was after the fairness doctrine, right?
Exactly.
Media fairness doctrine got stripped.
Exactly. So when you have 100 million people that sit this thing out, that kind of shows, but they're not going to ever, the establishment's never going to report on that. They're going to make it look like, even if it's a small people that vote, they're going to make that, they're going to put a magnifying glass and make that look like that's a much more bigger representation of America than it really is.
But the establishment seems to be losing power as far as their media infrastructure. It seems that legacy media is going down, and their attempts to get in on like YouTube, media, like the Don Lemon, completely tanked. And so I'm not really sure where
But they also are finding now, they realize that. And right now what they're doing is they're infiltrating what they call breadtube channels. This is, I forget, but I think the Gray Zone has done some excellent reporting on this. I think can't recall the exact YouTuber, but she was a part of breadtube. I don't quote me on this, but I believe she was British, or she had a British show. Come to find out, she was also on the CIA's payroll when she used to talk about it. So there's some very questionable stuff. I think Vosh, there's a lot of red flags up about him, and he tries to purport himself to be a socialist libertarian, pro-Bernie.
Vosh is completely full of shit. Like
he's completely full of shit, but
yeah.
he's trying to purport himself of being something that he's not.
Yeah,
at least what he purports himself to be is kind of like a Noam Chomsky-esque type of. But no, he's completely for the deep state and all of that kind of shit. He's for all of this. So even though, yes, some of the legacy media, yes, they realize that. So what they do is they start infiltrating some of these other so-called independent groups and stuff like that. So they're very wily, and they have a way of evolving.
Well, in the CIA, right? I mean, I saw a video from my master, Ed Stracher. He shared a video from KUTV interviewing the naval officer who reported that Kennedy got shot by his driver. And apparently Kennedy's driver, his original driver, died at Camp David. And that I guess it was encouraged that there be no autopsy. So he had a new driver installed, CIA puppet that literally turned around and shot him in the head with an air powered gun. And Jackie Onassis was trying to climb out of the car, but then they yanked her back in, and then she effectively became a prisoner because the Secret Service were a part of it as well, and Secret Service watch her kids. And so now, hey, what are you going to do, right? And so what a terrible place to be in. But yeah, to your point, CIA definitely has their wiles. They've started pretty much every major catastrophe that we've been a part of.
And they do all of these psyops throughout the rest of the world. What makes you think that they don't orchestrate the same thing on their own people?
I'm convinced that every single Facebook post that you see that says, I bet you can't spell, I bet you can't name a single fish that doesn't have the word or the letter E in it. I feel like that's a psyop so they can get machine learning to see how people think on a grand scale.
I mean, there's a whole, that's one, that's an interesting one, but yeah, I can completely see it. You're talking about the evil empire here.
Yeah.
They're not a benevolent force, and they can go ahead and try to put as much rainbow flag and shit like that as much as they want, but it's not. These people, they torture, they rape, and they pillage, and that's been their history and their legacy.
Well, and then the very people who work hand in glove with the CIA were very pro Afghan war and very mad and angry that we left. That said, we left in a pretty shitty way. We shouldn't have just left with just like a guillotine slicing down, left all sorts of equipment there, left some people there. And then the very same people who were mad that we got out of Afghanistan, not necessarily in the way that we got out, but just mad that, we ended their slush fund, are all universally pro-Ukraine. And none of them are for diplomacy, which is so
Why
weird.
do you think they let Biden get out of Afghanistan in the first place? Is because they were planning to do this in Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see
they're in the business of making war. That's what these people do.
Yes.
And if they're not making their money this place, then it's okay. We'll milk this place dry. Let's go ahead and see what we can do to F up this situation more. And the problem is right now we're literally poking the bear.
Oh, dude, like we're at a place where now two countries who own 92% of the nuclear arms are dick measuring. And
we had Ukraine just the other day try to stage us or push us into World War III by dropping that bomb in Poland. And so
which they blamed on Russia. And then NATO blew up the Russian pipeline and said, well, Russia did it themselves. And then Russia showed overwhelming evidence that NATO did it. And NATO had to come out, yeah, you're right, we did. And then shortly before that happened,
Biden talked about it.
He talked about how he would stop it, that we'd stop it.
Oh, we have ways of blowing it up. They did it. It's like, come on,
Yeah, we have ways of keeping that from happening. And then, oh my God, look at that. It happened. And then here's what's crazy is that Europeans are our allies. And now they're going to suffer with lacking natural gas to heat their homes in brutal winters, all for the sake of money and profiteering. And these same money profiteers and these mercenaries for hire, I guarantee every single one of them have some level of rainbow flag on their website. They introduce themselves with their pronouns and the emails. And it's scary. It's so scary.
I know what you're talking about. And don't be fooled. By their fruits you shall know them.
Yeah.
So but anybody that really wants to have a little bit of better idea of how the U.S. intelligence agencies blackmail, how they operate, watch the movie Snowden.
Oliver Stone that did that?
Oliver Stone movie. Watch it. It's really good. It kind of shows you a little bit about what the intelligence agencies do.
Yep. On
our allies even.
Yep.
And most recently, I think Jimmy Dore just posted a video. It's English translation, but it's a German a government official talking about how intelligence agencies from the US come in and bully allies and get them to do what they want.
Yeah.
So we are an evil empire. Even with our allies, we make them bend the knee like it's Game of Thrones. And so, yeah.
I mean, it's been that way since our
We dropped the atom bomb. America's been that way since we dropped the atom bomb.
No, it's been that way since before, man. Like, if you, though, the way that we would show up, you know, from our founding, and show up and just bargain, and the way that we would bargain with the natives.
Mhm.
And again, hey, well, yeah, let's go ahead and, you know, give you some of these blankets. Oh, never mind those scabs. Don't worry about those scabs on there. And then, oh my gosh, your entire tribe died. Oh, those are smallpox scabs. Oh, I'm sorry. And so, I mean, the evil that
Yeah.
we've purported on the people in, you know, in this great land, even hundreds of years before it became America. I mean, this is, you know, what happened in Germany was an atrocity, but pales in comparison to what we've done here. And we haven't come to terms with that. We alienated many people on the right who want to love this country, will see somebody who wants to make it better as kind of beating it up and casting dispersion, and then they'll scream at you to, well, then just leave. And that's no way to live. That's the level of intolerance that we've got to deal with as well. I don't think it's as dangerous as wokeism tolerance, because wokeism right now is basically what the military industrial complex uses to cloak a lot of their goings ons. Well, don't you know that we have to blow up everyone in Raqqa and blow up the entire city? Because you know what? They wouldn't allow women to learn in schools.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah. And so this is
Well,
where
they're using woke terminologies, using basically what a lot of the Anti-Defamation League and stuff like that have been using for decades, where you can't even criticize the actions of Israel or automatically they assign you as being an anti-Semite. And it's like,
Yep.
what? No. I can criticize the actions of a state
Yes.
without being
Yep.
bigoted towards any ethnicity or religion. I'm talking about the actions of a state. And I have my severe criticisms of Islam in general, but when it comes to humanitarian rights, there's no justification for what's going on in Palestine right now. It is a
Yeah.
human rights crisis. And the fact that you can't even talk about that or even say that I'm pro-Palestinian rights, you can't even say you're pro-Palestinian rights, human rights, and you're labeled now as an anti-Semite with some groups.
Yeah.
That's where I think wokeism originally kind of really originated from, or at least where they're borrowing a lot of that from for everything else.
That would make sense. I mean, if it's not the CIA, then Mossad, and then MI5 or MI6, whatever it is, right? They're probably the three major ones that control the Western world, and then you've got China and then Russia kind of controlling the Eastern. Now, what I also find very dangerous and problematic with people who, and I certainly fell into this camp. People who get so insulated by others who just repeat their ideas to where they feel that they're completely okay. Sam Harris was on, being interviewed a few years ago, and just talked about how ridiculous it is that we're comparing Biden's corruption to Trump's corruption. He said that Biden's corruption is as a firefly to the sun of Trump's corruption, and that's sheerly Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, Biden's corruption.
I think that was trigonometry when he basically admitted in front of the trigonometry, the questioners, the interviewers, that there was more to the Hunter Biden. There was collusion or something. He actually admitted that there was collusion between media sources and stuff to downplay the Biden laptop.
Yeah, he actually said, so first he said that he was completely okay with a left-wing conspiracy to keep Trump out of office. And like, well, wait a minute. I actually wanted to move on, but now you said something I want to dig into. So you're saying that you're okay with a conspiracy to keep from a fair democratic process, a left-wing conspiracy? Like, well, then the way he answered, well, it was far from left-wing because Liz Cheney was part of it. And then they said, okay, so you're okay with a conspiracy to prevent and then he just started twisting himself in pretzels.
Yeah,
And
he
that's
did.
somebody who, I mean, that guy's, you know,
He's
arguably a
smart, but he
genius.
had a moment where that was a moment where he let his guard down,
He let his guard down because of Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
And therein lies the
And it
danger.
shows you anybody can be susceptible. You can be, and
Yes.
he's one of the smartest out there that they have. But even as smart as he is, he could let his guard down in a moment like that too, and expose what he's really thinking.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, he tried to walk that back, and it's like I have my severe issues with him on some things, because I do think he has some very strong bigoted issues towards people that are Muslims, specifically of the Muslim world. Not saying that I don't disagree with some of his criticisms of Islam specifically, but he's one of those types that will hold a magnifying glass to the sins that happen in the Islamic world while holding a microscope to the stuff that happens there in Israel and shit like that, you know, and I have an issue with that one.
Yeah. It's
Same thing with Bill Maher. Bill Maher does the same thing, you know.
of course.
Yeah.
Well, anyone who's at that level, right?
Yeah.
You can't help but be influenced by your friends, which is why if there is an activist, right? So let's say
I
AOC,
want everybody to be so obsessed with identity politics.
right? So say AOC, for instance, right? Let's say that she was sincere from the beginning, and it seems like it looking at her shoes, right? The shoes that she wore holes in to get elected. But she didn't insulate herself enough with people who knew why they believed what they believed.
Mhm.
And since they didn't know why they believed, it was very easy to incrementally get her to shift, and incrementally over, you know, a few weeks and then a few months. And that was it.
Yeah, it was very easy. I mean, AOC is just a joke. She's just a shell of what she was before she entered Congress, and she became everything that she supposedly was supposed to fight against.
Well, I mean, Bernie became a complete joke too, because then it came from, he first started pointing out how corrupt the entire system was. And then it went to just, no, Republicans are bad, which is, you know, basically Trump derangement syndrome, but instead of orange man bad, it's red shirts bad.
Yeah.
And that's just a pathetic way to operate.
It is.
And as if, you know, any one political organization is going to, on their own, especially in nowadays, come to where they are. I mean, they feed off each other, and they push each other to more extremes and more extremes. And to only call out one is to allow the other one to give a free pass on their extremism.
Well, I chuckle because supposedly, if you listen to legacy or a lot of legacy media, supposedly there's one political party that's going to be the bastion and bulwark of democracy, the Democrats. And I chuckled to myself and thinking, yeah, that's what democracy is supposed to be, right? One party rule.
Right. I know.
One party rule, vote for the political party that's going to save democracy. So it's like, vote for one party rule.
Well, they've already have, I mean, if you look at Facebook, man, anyone who posts or Twitter, who posts a random tweet or Facebook post, if they refer to Republicans, they likely will refer to them as traitors. And if we're already at a place where we refuse rational thought, we are already intolerant of any sort of rational ideas or expressing rational ideas to then oppose irrational ideas. Well, this puts us in a very, very dangerous place, because a traitor, well, you kind of given yourself free reign to act as you will, because, hey, they were a traitor, right? And so we're a tinderbox right now, and I see a bunch of people just throwing matches in there.
Yeah, they're not only throwing matches, they're dousing it with oil while they're doing that. So yeah, all I got to say is kind of brace yourself, because this next election year is going to be a wild ride.
So I normally, for federal, vote third party, because I want them to get their 5% so they can eventually get like federal funding and actually get another person up on stage. The problem right now is that I feel like I've been wasting my vote doing that. Like doing it locally, yeah, it's absolutely, because local elections, you know, can be won or lost by like 10 votes. And so voting for a third party in a local election is a very, very smart way to go. In a national election, I'm not sure. I haven't quite seen any sort of dividends from my actions, positive dividends.
That's where the enigma I'm in, and is if I don't vote for the third party, then I just probably likely won't go, because I I don't, if neither party represents me, then you're going in for the lesser of two evils, and the lesser of two evils is still evil. Because the
Lesser of two evils is
still serve
still
the same
evil.
interests that you're supposedly anti or supposedly against. It's just at that point, who do you culturally more identify with?
So I would come back to how we started this with Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance. And Biden is tolerating the type of intolerance we've been talking about, the wokeism that then the CIA, perverts and uses for cover. Well, because Biden's in office, we're at real risk of destroying all life on Earth with a nuclear winter. That just wouldn't happen under Trump. And so by that measure alone, Trump being in office, yeah, he might be crazy. And he may not be somebody that I could call a good person. But you know what? We would not be where we are with Russia right now with Trump in office. And so I could see myself voting for Trump. That doesn't mean that I support him. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I could see myself voting for him just because of how bad Biden and the Democrats are. And we saw this from 2016. Hillary Clinton, he got his face pissed on by a Russian hooker, right? Russia. And so we've had a boner for them for a long time. And NATO has had a boner for them for a long time, which, I wonder why. It's because the US provides most of the funds for NATO, which is why NATO has a boner for Russia and has had for a long time.
I'm not going to, if you feel like you want to, yeah, that's fine. My question is, I don't even know if Trump's going to be the nominee.
I can't imagine anyone replacing him. I just,
American people will always surprise you.
They already have, by the fact that he became the nominee. Yeah. And especially, and what surprised me even more is how much fairer and freer the Republican primaries are over the Democrat primaries, and the Republicans are traitors.
They have winner take all and all of that stuff too. Yeah. But at the same time, when you look at, and I'm not debating,
I get it.
Republican or Democrat. That's not what I'm saying. When you look at it, he's still, if he gets in, is he still going to have the same appeal that he did 8 years ago? He already has a 4-year record now.
He has a 4-year record.
He's not going to be able to run as a complete outsider. I think that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge this time.
Well, they've already given him the gift. The fact that they rated Mar-a-Lago, like his points went up. His approval rating actually went up. And again, and then all you have to do is point to Chuck Schumer on Rachel Maddow, saying, well, you know what, you don't want to mess with the intelligence agencies because, the deep state, right? They've got 6 ways to Sunday to mess with you back. And that's all he has to do. They've given him the best.
That's where the whole Russia thing came from.
They've given him the best gift ever. And that makes him even more popular with people who distrust the government. And Fauci has given near everybody a reason to distrust the government. And so the current bullshit that's been going on for the last 3 years has given him the best gift ever for him.
There's also tweets that I've seen by some libertarians that's been circulating, like one of my favorite libertarians, Dave Smith. He tweeted something. He says, this one should be a disqualifier for anyone that opposed the authoritarian lockdowns. And that's a tweet by Trump saying that USA made the right decision by locking down. He was criticizing Sweden by doing so. Yeah. And so he's kind of walked in that. I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm just saying is he has a record now, whereas before he could run as completely as an outsider. But now people can point to, and they can say, I'm just saying is he has a lot more options.
But they already did. And he said, I didn't say that. And then people are like, okay, I'm cool with that. And so
that's what I'm saying. We'll see. I'm not on either team here. I'm just kind of watching this as a complete objective bias. I don't even know if I'm going to participate in this next
playing with that idea though of what you just said about the lockdowns. What if China, let's just say, what if China did it on purpose and it was, biological warfare, because they got the entire Western world to ruin their own economies, and to
I've
lock
heard,
down their countries and lock down their states in the exact same way that the China Communist Party does.
I've heard more recently that it's been asserted that this may not have even been released in China, that it was released in the USA,
Well, I mean, that's where
a US biolab.
that's where the Spanish flu came from Kansas, and then we blamed it on the Spanish. So
Yeah.
that would, I mean, so here's the
That's
thing.
one of the more recent things. That's a recent thing. Is this may not have even originated in China. It might have originated in US biolab.
Well, even if it did originate in China, it still originated in the US because it was a US funded
Yeah.
lab in China. And I do hope though that if nothing else, I would love to see Trump held accountable for Fauci. Fauci was only able to do what he was able to do because Trump was too busy fighting people and too busy firing people than to have competent people keep tabs on corrupt and evil people like Fauci. Because Fauci went and undermined him behind his back to allow for gain of function research, which was outlawed. Obama, for one of the great things that he did, was like, whoa, this is fucking dangerous. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be entertaining nevertheless. So we'll see what happens. I still think that we might even see someone enter the race and become still Trump's thunder away from him. You never know. We live in a different era now.
You're right.
We live
It's
in a
possible.
completely different era where, you might be able to get somebody in there that could afford their own campaign like Trump and to be like, I can out Trump.
You're right that it's possible. I don't see it happening because Trump will do anything for $1. And that
He's
also
8 years older. He's also 8 years older.
yeah.
And I mean, Biden is no spring chicken or anything, but Trump isn't that far behind him either. And if you watched his announcement video or his announcement speech, it didn't have the same oomph that like his initial one even did. Like when he was coming down the stairs, it was much more subdued. It was much more quiet even.
That's what McDonald's will do to you, man. When you eat McDonald's every day, dude, it'll kill your energy.
I don't doubt it, but I'm saying this is like, he may be a little bit older this time. He may not have the same, he's 8 years older now than he was like in 2016 and stuff. That might impact things. We don't know. I mean, I think it would be more entertaining if it's Trump. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, if you get Trump in there, he's only going to be in there for 4 years. So who's he going to select as his VP?
Well, and that's also something I'd find really interesting too, is because historically Trump has been much more aligned with Democrats. He's friends with the Clintons, for Christ's sake, and has been.
Was
He's
a
gone to
Democrat
all,
for many years.
yeah.
Well, really, he was a Democrat for like 40 years.
Well, and so that's what would be interesting to see, is that now that he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, what would happen? Like, would some of his true
I almost
nature?
thought that I'm surprised that, of course, I don't follow partisan politics anymore, so I wasn't following the polling data. And I don't even know how much I trust polling to begin with anymore. I think more honest metric anymore to use rather than polling is AI analysis. I think AI analysis of like social media can really probably more accurately predict of what the public sentiment is versus what polling goes on.
That makes a lot of sense, because machine learning will probably see whoever's the most vehement will likely go out and vote as well.
So that I think, and it also shows you a more honest sample, because people aren't going to lie as much to their family and friends about what they really think, and so we'll see. That aside, but I'm wondering what's going to happen. My prediction is Biden will not seek another term. I still think he's not going to run for re-election. I think if I'm listening to the rumblings from that side, I think the money in the Democratic Party is really, really trying to elevate Gavin Newsom.
Yeah. Well,
So
Pelosi's nephew.
My prediction is it's at this point, and then like I said, don't discount some third party or somebody else that could come in, and decide to run as a Democrat or as a Republican and really shake the race up a little bit more and change things like Trump did in 2016. But everything remaining equal, I think it's going to be either Newsom versus Trump or Newsom versus DeSantis in 2024.
I wonder. Yeah,
Because
I wonder if DeSantis.
I think the real race is going to be on the Republican side for the nomination.
Yeah, I mean, and DeSantis has shown impeccable ability to get things done. We had like a bridge rebuilt in like 3 days after a hurricane. And so that's something that could really
Well, he
speak.
just won re-election by 20 points in Florida, which,
Well, Florida is deeply red, so it was definitely going to go to.
and he only won his first election by like 2 points or something. So he barely won his first election. So to come back and win by like over 20 points is quite remarkable. And I think I don't want to discount his appeal to that base. We'll just see how many, how big that Trump movement still is.
Yeah.
I mean, I do see cracks in it though, because I don't think a lot of Trump's candidates performed as well this last time around. I thought that Kari Lake was going to definitely win the governor's race in Arizona. In fact, I was almost like counting on like a Trump Kari Lake ticket in 2024. Like, oh, if she wins the governor's race in 2024, then she secured her VP spot on Trump's, ticket. She may be the first president because he would only serve 4 years. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
We'll see if Mark Cuban, because he's been teasing if he wants to run, or even, someone like him can come in and do some damage, or even like you could even get like a real wild card. Like what if what's his name? Movie star with Black Adam. What's his name?
Oh, Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson has even been teasing that he might run for president. I mean, we live in an era now where you just can't. A few years ago, you could laugh and be like, "Oh yeah, that's funny," but now you're like, "Well, Trump won, so anybody can win, right?" We live in that era.
So Mark Cuban, I could see Trump doing exactly what he did last time to really expose how bad the Clintons were, just by saying, well, hey, I know how bad this club is because I've been a part of it for years.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think that Mark Cuban has the
I'm just
ability.
throwing names out there. I'm just
but the thing is, I think you're right. I could absolutely see Mark Cuban, because he's got the ego for it. Run for
got the money that he doesn't even need anybody to write him a check or anything. So.
And so, I don't know, man. If Trump isn't on his game and he can't just
he's showing if he's showing signs of his age,
yes,
anymore. So that's going to be something. And then another thing he has against him is that some of his base may be like, we love you, but you're only going to be there for 4 years. And then if you get in, who's going to say they're not going to try to do so many different things and try to impede your, with investigations like they try to do Russia and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying is that there could be things that if you're in a primary with Donald Trump, there's wily things that they can do to raise issues too. I'm just saying it's not going to be as easy for him this time around as I think it was in 2016.
I think if nothing else, the Hunter Biden laptop now being authenticated by legacy media, even though everyone knew it was real, and anyone paying attention, I think that is the best gift they could give Trump. Because the second they say, well, what about these investigations?
Or anybody that becomes the nominee.
Anyone that becomes the nominee, but especially Trump, because if Trump becomes the nominee, he can, and if somebody does use that line against him about that, he can just say, well, look at Hunter Biden. Look how bullshit it was. Everything else is bullshit. Right. And so why did they bury Hunter Biden? Because they knew that everything they had was bullshit. And even though he's, corrupt as hell, like especially when it comes to, to Sam Harris's point, he was very upset about Trump University. And, that's right. It was terrible the way that he just hoodwinks people. He's known for being a grifter, having a contractor come do some work and then he just sends them off without paying them. And that's terrible. That's terrible to do to small business owners. And I hate to say it, but I think most small business owners are people who likely are going to vote for Trump. And so the people who are hurt by his actions like that loudmouth bully, but then they get hurt by it. And I think, again, it comes down to that alienation of the self. rather than the, the authentic giving up of the self.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm going to be entertained nevertheless. I'm not invested in anybody this year, but I'm going to definitely pop out the popcorn and enjoy it.
Are you not entertained? Are you not
I think the
entertained?
debates are going to be fun. Those will be fun because they're not even real to begin with.
They're not.
It's all a show. So it's like you might as well tune in and see who entertains you the most. It's better than any of the other pre-formulated. It's just so fake. It's worse. Thing is they're not even really good actors either. They could, I mean, they've never been trained for like, that kind of stuff. They're trained to just, so like when they try to be like a Hillary Clinton trying to relate to people or like trying to,
She's so fake, man. She doesn't land.
It's just so, I'd almost admire or appreciate her more. She didn't even try to be like that. It just was just her.
Just be like a straight hard ass like Madeleine Albright.
Just be who you are without trying to embellish anything, I wouldn't agree, but I mean, at least I have more respect, but yeah.
Yeah, Kamala Harris is right there too, as fake as they come.
She's actually worse.
Yeah.
And that's not saying much, but I think Kamala Harris is actually less talented than Hillary Clinton.
I don't know. I think that says a lot. I think if you said that you're more talented than Hillary Clinton on an acting level, I think that's not saying a lot. But I think it says a whole lot if you're worse.
If it wasn't for Kamala Harris's identity of what she being African American female
and Indian, right?
Or Asian African American mix and a female, she would not be on that stage.
Yeah. Well, 100%, man. Tulsi sunk that ship. And that's they're hiding behind her identity as if it means something.
Yeah. And it doesn't, because not even Black people are buying it.
Yeah, man. I know. I know. Well, I think that the entire world is still waiting for that hope and change that Obama was talking about.
Yeah, well, he became 100+ millionaire.
Yep.
His life changed for the better.
Yep. Yeah, it's so crazy, man. And it's yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I can do with force, nor would I want to help people see. So I guess the only thing that I can do is be who I am, vibrate at a higher level and higher frequency, and invite others by being the example and the invitation to be like, hey, what if your life didn't suck as bad as it does right now?
Yeah. That's all you can do.
And perhaps the best thing, right? And the Buddhists say that there's no place for force. There's no place for that expended effort, right? In the Tao, right? The non-doing, the Wu Wei. Alan Watts talks about how it's more of a non-force. That it doesn't mean that you don't cut wood. It just means that you cut wood along the grains where wood is most easily cut, right? Where the master waits for the right opportunity to present itself, and then they seize upon it rather than go and dig and dig and dig and dig and run all over to find that opportunity.
I see. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
Well, sir, this has been a lot of fun. We kind of went all over. We talked a little bit about paradox tolerance and kind of got in and out of that, talking about things adjacent to it. But I really do think that psychedelics are a great way to
By the way, if you ever make it down this way, I can definitely hook you up with that assembly tribe or anybody listening. So
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, we could hold hands and skip into the ayahuasca center, and then
well, I think they do different kind of retreats too. They even do like microdosing, like breath work and stuff like that. And they do other stuff like Wim Hof method and a lot of different stuff there. It's a really cool place, and I really like it a lot. And yeah, it's very welcoming.
That's cool, man. Well, yeah, go with your gut feeling. If you feel like that resonates with you and it feels good,
Mhm.
Hey man, there's a reason why it feels good. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that what feels good today again is going to feel good tomorrow, but
No.
that's the whole point, is that
Yeah.
you evolve into that. You're like, oh, okay, well, this helped me get to there, just like a stair. The first step helps me
Exactly.
get to the second step, which then helps me get to the third step.
Exactly. Exactly. Man, it's nice to kind of have a community in an area where I don't know that many people.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, man. I like that a lot. Well, sir, any last thoughts?
Happy Thanksgiving, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.
Hell yeah, man. Awesome. Well, happy Thanksgiving. I'm glad that you had a blast over at the Isha Center. And yeah, man, that's something that I'd like to look into as well sometime in the future. Kind of have to stabilize things on my end here first. But yeah, man, I deeply admire Sadhguru, and I love a lot of what he does and how he influences people. And he can get a white, half Iranian guy and just a white, I don't know, I'm actually Ukraine and Scottish, believe it
Oh,
or not.
wow.
Yeah. And so and the fact that his words can speak so deeply to my soul and to your soul as well, and that speaks volumes, right? Because it doesn't matter. Identity is the least important aspect of who we are.
It is. It is. And it's all an illusion anyway.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well, and it's an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't praise people for accidents. Praise people for what they
No,
do.
no, it's like, yeah, it's like what George Carlin said, happy to be, or proud to be Irish. Why do you take pride in something that's not an accomplishment?
Right.
Why not just be happy to be Irish?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
That's
makes a lot
funny.
of sense.
Well, on that note, proud to be Irish, even though I'm not Irish. All right, man. You have a wonderful night.
You too. Take care, bud.
All right. Peace.
Peace.